Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Josh Snipes. If you're just checking out the video today, make sure to hit subscribe because I do all sorts of map guides, operator guides, tips and tricks, and videos like this. And that's going to help out the channel a lot if you guys give it all the support you possibly can. Now, today's video, we're going to be focusing on Siege Academy. Now, if you haven't watched the previous videos that I've done on this, I'll make sure to leave a card in the top right corner so that way you can watch the playlist. Basically, what it is it's a Siege Academy in terms of teaching people who are new or novice, or even people who are advanced who probably haven't learned a couple things about an operator. It's basically just giving them the how-tos, the what you need to do, sort of tendencies and things that you need to do for operators, for maps, for playstyles, roles, anything like that. It's just basically a subreddit that you can ask any question about Siege pretty much and get an answer from other people inside of Siege. And this is a great place because there's a lot of teachers there and a lot of diamonds that are teaching people how to get better at the game. So make sure to hit the link in the description, go check it out, go ask questions there. I just pulled all these questions from there also, so if you're wondering, that's where I got these questions for. But let's start off with Siege Academy. Now, the first question is going to come, it's going to be Dokkaebi or Nomad. Now, you're going to end up spending the same renown on these characters regardless, so you kind of have to make a decision which one you like. Now, the pros of Dokkaebi, you do get to ring phones, you will hear those ring, you do get smoke grenades, as well as when your phone is ringing, you can't go on your cam till you silence it. When someone has to go silence it, they're going to be holding F or whatever button it is on console, and you're going to basically be vulnerable in that state. The only problems are she has a DMR, the SMG-12 is not good at medium to long distance range, and also a big portion of it is it requires a lot of teamwork to be able to capitalize on Dokkaebi to its fullest effect. And I feel like when you're playing in ranked and not in a sort of coordinated stack, it can be a little bit harder to do so. Now, taking a look at Nomad, you have the pros of when you pretty much put this on a doorway, there is no way someone is going to get past this unless they somehow impact the air jab off of the doorway, which can be pretty hard to do depending on where you put it. Also, a big thing is that she can cut off rotations and cut off flanks. The air jabs can be eaten by ADSs, but honestly, when you're playing with Nomad, you should be throwing flashbangs into the site to get rid of some ADSs to really hold down those rotation holes or flanks or any sort of doorway that might be inner sight or above sight. So I think the biggest thing to me, if I had to choose and I was doing this, especially with my hard-earned renown, I'd probably go with Nomad just because I like her gun better. I like the gadget better. I think that overall, when you're playing in ranked and maybe you're solo or duo queuing, you don't have to rely on your team as much, especially because you don't need to rely on them to hold down your flank. Now, she doesn't have a claymore anymore, so that's kind of sad, but honestly, just run flashbangs, you'll be able to get rid of ADSs and you'll be A-okay. Now, the next question is, how do pros guess where enemies are? And I'm going to extend this to sort of just higher level Siege. So plat and above, also comp, also semi-pros, pros, just things that I've observed because I'm not necessarily at the highest level of Siege possible. Now, the biggest thing to me is that in terms of game sense and map experience, you learn that through playing. Now, play ranked, play comp if you can, and you'll start to understand that there might be two different metas, especially more so in the ranked versus comp areas. When you're playing in ranked, people are probably more willing to peek you, probably more willing to run out and do dumb stuff that just makes you think, why in the world would someone go do that? That just happens to be in ranked because you have really nothing to lose besides your elo. You're not going to throw a match. You're not going to do anything like that by just doing a simple run out and possibly dying, possibly getting a kill. People in ranked tend to do those high risk, high reward plays more often than not. It tends to get shut down a lot more in comp play where it's a lot more coordination into this game. Now, the biggest thing to me is that a lot of times you can sort of predict where people roam and sort of predict how people move because you've seen it before. Most of the time, you understand, hey, if we're gonna play on Cafe and they're playing up top, we know that there might be a Pulse or a Valkyrie or someone with the C4 that's sitting in that middle floor that's gonna try and throw a C4 up before the round really gets into the latter part of the time. And I think the biggest thing to me is that you learn that as you play. You start to experiment with, okay, is this going to work? This might not work. This cam might work here. Pulse might work on this side. It might not work. But I think the biggest thing is that you learn it also from watching pro players play. When you watch a LAN tournament, when you watch R6 Pro League, when you watch even Challenger League, you'll start to realize how operators get used and you'll start to learn yourself and sort of create, okay, I understand how this works. What can I do? What can't I do? You understand your limitations, so you kind of know what you can and can't do. And the biggest thing to me is that you'll learn game sense as you keep playing and as you watch other people play also. When you're watching, even when you're dead, try to spectate your teammate if there's no cams left, because you might learn a thing or two from watching them, especially at that higher level of play. But learning Siege is pretty hard, so I definitely would try to go on your favorite streamer and just sort of figure out what they do and try to imitate it until you figure out what works and what doesn't work for you in terms of roles and how they play. Now, the next question is, what's the best way to use Mozzie? In an Echo type of way, more active, or as a Valk type of way, a little bit more passive? Now, I genuinely think that there's two different ways to use Mozzie. The biggest one is to shut down anyone from droning you out. So not necessarily getting drones, but the ability to make sure that people can't drone through a certain doorway. You sort of shut down the doorway with your pest, and that makes people not be able to drone you out. They don't know your exact position, and therefore you're going to have a little bit better chance when you're coming to a 1v1 in that gunfight. Another way that I've seen Mozzie used in terms of when you actually do get a drone, I tend to leave the drone above site or in a room that is next to site, so that way if they're coming towards me, I know that they're there, and they might have shot, say, a Valkyrie cam or something that was in there ahead of time, and they don't necessarily know that the drone is there themselves, because most people don't really look at a drone that long, especially when it's your own drone that you didn't realize got Mozzie trapped. So I think the biggest thing to me is that if you want to, there's two different ways. If you want to use them in a more active playstyle, I think it's going to kind of play out like Echo, where you might drone your roamer or your late flanker to a room and try to get them. So say if you're playing on Consulate down in the basement, you might drone them up that back stairs and try to help them get a late flank off. Or you can honestly just use them, put it in a really good safe spot, and they might not see it, or they might not shoot it in general, and you can give off intel without completely exposing yourself to sort of losing any sort of drone or anything like that. Because honestly, the pest is going to work whether or not you get a drone, because they can't drone that room or they lost that drone. So either way, it's a loss of intel, and that's the biggest part of Mozzie. Now, the next question is learning how to use Gridlock. First things first, would you say she's worth it? Which of her weapons should I use? When should I use her ability? General tips. Now, the biggest thing to me is that I think that Gridlock is one of the characters that was kind of overshadowed by Capitao, especially more so in today's meta. Now, in terms of what I mean is that Gridlock is really good at shutting down people from sort of approaching you or trying to get off a flank or anything like that, because it makes so much noise when people have to shoot your sort of traps out and try to make a walk path that they have to go through. And especially if people aren't watching for these traps, they spread and spread and spread and spread, and you have to end up shooting more and more and more as time goes on, because it just keeps growing to a certain point. But I mean, it can grow for a long time before it actually stops. So you end up having to sort of deal with that if you're playing against a Gridlock. Now, for me, Gridlock is personally one of the characters that I think is a really good replacement for Capitao, because not only does she have smokes, but she can also use those Gridlock traps to sort of hold down flanks. So that way it just makes people take more time to be able to, say if you're going to push down onto the site and you're going to try to go for the plant, you're going to throw those around where normally people will try and either vault through or a doorway that they might come through to be able to shut them down and slow them down. Because having to aim down at the ground and shoot your traps out, that already in and of itself is doing its job in terms of slowing the defenders down. But the thing is, now that we have the 7-second plant timer, she's even more important, especially given that she has smokes and the traps. You can throw those smokes down, throw the traps into the smoke, and they won't be able to see the traps grow until it kind of grows out of that smoke or the smoke clears. So one of the biggest things to me, let's think on Consulate. You want to put them in 3 different spots since you have 3 different traps, and it's going to kind of depend on where you think that the defenders might come on through from. But I think that overall with this diagram, you'll be able to see here that there is a pretty good spots that you can hold with these traps, especially because it just slows down defenders so much. And you can also get where defenders normally will try to rotate to try to get the plant before it actually goes down. Now, lastly, one of the biggest questions that I feel like a lot of people ask is, what is the best ops for aggressive playstyle? Now, on the attacking side, you have your entry fraggers, which would be someone like Zofia, IQ, or even Ashe. Obviously, Ashe is probably the OG rusher. I think that these 3 operators, this isn't the end-all be-all list, but I think those 3 operators alone do such a good job of being able to just have so much fragging power and being able to do, their guns are fantastic across the board. Obviously, you have Ash and Zofia who have impacts that can sort of get through soft walls if they need to, or at least make angles if they need to. And I think that overall, that having the speed along with those utility really helps when you're trying to clear out, say, above a site or below a site or somewhere next to a site that's on the complete opposite side of the building you're trying to enter. And I think that overall, those are 3 great attackers that you can use for an aggressive playstyle. Because you have to also think, Thatcher and Thermite obviously don't make a good aggressive playstyle, because if they die early in the round, you just lost so much utility. Now, 3 defenders that I can think of off the top of my head, and it's not the end-all be-all list again, is Jaeger, Vigil, and Mozzie. Now, Mozzie is kind of like that gray area where you can sort of flex off to more of an anchor role depending on how you want to play him. But I think that Vigil and Jaeger both do a fantastic job at roaming and being aggressive, being able to take gunfights, because both their guns are fantastic. And Vigil obviously has those impacts which can help with sort of rotate holes and getting away very quickly. Jaeger just has a really good defender gun that I think he can take a lot of fights. He has the magazine capacity to do so, and he has the damage output to really do a lot of damage to the attacking team if they enter the building without droning. Anyways, guys, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope this was a fun little video. I wanted to get this out pretty quickly because I feel like there's a lot of knowledge to be had, and I feel like not everyone knows about Siege Academy, so I just want to get that knowledge out there that this exists. Use it as your sort of your information guide. Ask questions. There's so many wonderful people on there. Chaos X is also a fantastic teacher on there. If you ever see this video, thank you so much, Chaos, for being amazing. But anyways, guys, thank you guys so much for watching. This is going to be the end of the video. Let me know if you have any questions down below, and I'll try to answer them as well as I can. With that being said, that's going to wrap things up for today, and this is going to be Josh Snipes signing off.